I participate in all your hostility to dogs and would readily join in any plan for exterminating the whole race. I consider them as the most afflicting of all the follies for which men tax themselves. But as total extirpation cannot be hoped for, let it be partial. I like well your outlines of a law for this purpose, but should we not add a provision for making the owner of a dog liable for all the mischief done by him, and requiring that every dog shall wear a collar with the name of the person inscribed who shall be security for his honest demeanor? I believe your calculation of their numbers and cost is far within bounds, and I am satisfied that taking the whole mass of dogs in the state into consideration, the average of what they get fairly and unfairly of the food fit for man, would one feed a man. Are there not as many sheep and hogs annually lost to the owners by dogs, or with their aid, as there are dogs in the state?
The dog has advantages in the way of uselessness as well as in special gifts of temperament. He is often spoken of in an eminent sense as the friend of man, and his intelligence and fidelity are praised. The meaning of this is that the dog is man's servant and that he has the gift of an unquestioning subservience and a slave's quickness in guessing his master's mood. He is the filthiest of the domestic animals in his person and the nastiest in his habits. For he makes up as a servile fawning attitude towards his master and a readiness to inflict damage and discomfort on all else. The dog then commends himself to our favour by affording play to our propensity for mastery, and he is also an item of expense and commonly serves no industrial purpose. The commercial value of canine monstrosities, such as the prevailing styles of pet dogs, both for men's and women's use, rests on their high cost of production, and their value to their owner lies chiefly in their utility as items of conspicuous consumption.
I want to present an excerpt from a book called American Dirt. The story follows Lydia, a bookstore owner in Acapulco, Mexico, and her son Luca as they flee for their lives after a brutal massacre orchestrated by a powerful drug lord. In this part, she ends up kicking a dog that is menacing her and her son.
At an open gate, a mutt barks at them, lunging and nipping. A woman in a drab floral dress comes out of the house to correct the dog. But before she can get there, Lydia kicks it savagely and feels no guilt for having done so. The woman yells after her, but Lydia keeps moving, holding Luca by the hand.
So, this is something I will likely explore further in the future, but one I've noticed, and which a few others have as well, is that dogs tend to be depicted in a more realistic way in books, especially older ones, as compared to on film and in cartoons. There's also a book which Sheepy's Web recently referenced.
I've been reading Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. It's really good. It was written in 1993, and it's set in 2025, when an authoritarian government led by President Donner has brought back company towns amidst economic and social collapse. The streets are filled with homeless people, gangs, and stray dogs. Women and children are suffering. People are desperate for work. Food is limited, security and safety ensured only by yourself and those around you. Already in the first few chapters, the main character Lauren and her family and neighbors have had to kill a dangerous feral dog that tried to attack them. Something that is apparently happening a lot in 2025. The book's a very realistic dystopia, one that sounds eerily similar to the 2025 we find ourselves in today.
You treat me like a dog and you expect me to smile? You remind me of a jackass.
Dogs aren't universally lauded, and people admit that dogs are lowly all the time, tacitly and otherwise. More often than not, calling someone a dog is an insult rather than a compliment.
I'm a grade A steak. You ain't nothing but dog food.
Rare exceptions like this aside,
because real dogs always return with food for the pack.
Dog as a term of endearment in American slang, it's almost always a derogatory term. And of course, when it's used as a greeting, it's often spelled differently, aka D-A-W-G, rather than D-O-G. And that's the only exception I can think of. But in general, calling someone a dog is considered an insult, however, even in American English, when used to demean women and girls in particular. As one Quora user points out, it's a harsh version of ugly.
They just had to debate a fucking maniac up there who didn't give a fuck, dude. But it was fun to cheer for him in the debates. There's one debate, he's like in the middle of it going back and forth about the economy with Ted Cruz. They're literally talking about the economy, and in the middle of it, he's just like, Ted's wife, ugly as a dog.
And as someone else wrote on Insta, calling a man a dog is a derogatory insult, meaning you consider him to be a worthless, unpleasant, or contemptible person, often implying bad behavior. And, fun fact, policemen are also called dogs in Polish slang. As Defenders pointed out in a video where she went over some of this stuff as well.
Use the word dog as a verb, and it means to harass or annoy, as does the verb to hound.
Here is an example of someone using the term getting dogged on from the lyrics to an AFI song called File 13. Obviously, this does not have a positive connotation.
You ain't nothing but a hound dog, been snooping around my door.
Fun fact, I actually rewrote the lyrics to the aforementioned AFI song, the one called File 13, into an anti-dog song. And then there's the term bird dogging. And to get dogged by something, this is not good either. It means to be consistently bothered by something.
And guess what your favorite rapper, he's up.
Then there's the B word. Really, bitch originally meant a female dog, and of course, it still does. However, it has long been an insult reserved almost entirely for women, though really, anyone can be called a bitch. And although there is stuff like this.
What's up, bitches? Shall we play a game, bitches? Peace out, bitches.
Generally, it is not a term of endearment. If you should ever find yourself incarcerated, the last thing you want to be is someone else's.
Hey, Peter.
Yeah.
Watch out for your cornhole, bud.
Okay, Lawrence.
There's also the term resting bitch face, or RBF. Just look it up and maybe even do an image search on it if you've never heard of it. Now, personally, I honestly don't know why this is a thing there's a name for and everything. And I gotta tell you, I'm not hating it. More importantly, this is not something that's within a person's control, as this commenter points out here. Nevertheless, it's a thing that might be perceived negatively, and which some women even try to fix or get rid of. And once again, we see an example of an insult related to dogs. Let's switch gears now. Of course, there's always history as well. As it states on this website,
dogs are often considered as man's best friend. However, the aforementioned phrase has a certainly negative meaning. The same phrase exists in French as well. Other negative phrases with dogs include work like a dog, die like a dog's life, etc. How long ago in the English language does this negative connotation date? Dogs may be man's best friend in modern-day affluent westernized societies, but they weren't always. For centuries, if not millennia, they were mainly wild animals that roamed human settlements, eating scraps and leftovers, fighting with each other, and spreading diseases. This is still the case in some places. Or they were animals kept for working, such as shepherd dogs. Domesticated, friendly, clean puppies are a relatively recent phenomenon, and expressions like the ones you mention hail back to a time when dogs were certainly not man's best friend. Prior to the 18th century, dogs were kept for hunting and defense and not as pets. The only deviation from that rule was that of the derided lapdog. Lapdogs apart, the phrases used to refer to dogs in the 16th and 17th centuries indicate their image as being vicious and disease-ridden. Hair of the dog that bit you, first used in 1546 as a reference to rabies. Cast someone to the dogs, 1556. Dog in the manger, 1564. If you lie down with dogs, you will get up with fleas, 1573. The Dogs of War, 1601. Go to the dogs, 1619. Also, phrases that indicate the treatment of dogs show that they were considered to be of little worth. Lead a dog's life, 1528. Not fit for a dog, 1625. As sick as a dog, 1705. The unfortunate mutts were considered so beyond the pale that dog hangings, as punishment for chasing sheep or whatever else dogs did naturally, were commonplace. The phrase, "give a dog a bad name," 1705, was originally, quote, "give a dog a bad name and hang him."
America has a dog problem. Not just a stray dog problem. Not just an overbreeding problem. No, America's problem is far deeper and more grotesque. It's a cultural sickness, a worship of dogs that borders on lunacy. Let's dissect just how filthy, barbaric, and outright absurd this dog-obsessed culture is compared to the far more sensible approaches seen in Asian, Eastern European, and Muslim cultures. Americans, filthy cavemen clinging to dog worship. First, let's state the obvious. Americans treat dogs as deities disguised as housemates. From the moment you step into a city or suburb, you're greeted by the sight and smell of dogs defecating on every patch of public grass. Their owners dutifully pick it up with their bare hands inside thin plastic bags and carry it around as if it's some sacred offering. Where else in the world do people consider it normal to walk around holding steaming bags of feces? Let me be clear, this is not civilization. This is not hygiene. This is barbarism dressed up as domestication. The dog itself, a slobbering, bacteria-ridden animal, is already filthy. Now add to that the fact that its bodily waste is being carried around by people in public spaces. Cavemen were more hygienic than this. At least they kept animals outside and didn't parade their waste through marketplaces. Contrast this with Asian cultures. In many countries, dogs are not invited indoors or treated as family members. They are tools, functional animals meant to guard or herding. Westerners clutch their pearls at this idea. At least in Asian cultures, there's a pragmatic purpose to the relationship. The dog contributes to society through work. In America, they contribute nothing but endless waste and noise pollution. The mental midgets of American dog culture. Americans have been brainwashed by decades of media propaganda, turning them into what I can only describe as mental midgets when it comes to dogs. Disney, Hollywood, and Western TV have anthropomorphized dogs to the point of absurdity. Every cartoon and family sitcom features a dog as a talking, thinking, feeling character, often painted as more virtuous than the humans around it. The dog is always the loyal hero, the selfless protector, the misunderstood genius. It sighs dramatically, it whimpers cutely, and the camera zooms in as if we're meant to believe this slobbering beast is holding back profound thoughts. Even in real life, people project human emotions onto their dogs. "Oh, he's sad today," they say. No, he's not sad. He's an animal with no capacity for complex emotions like humans. This relentless stream of anthropomorphism has deluded Americans into thinking their dogs are their children. They throw birthday parties for dogs. They buy them clothes, push them around in strollers, and some even leave inheritances to their pets. Meanwhile, actual human beings, children, the homeless, the elderly, are neglected and left to fend for themselves. This isn't compassion, it's insanity. Then, there is the monstrosity of breeding and owning dogs. And if this cultural worship wasn't bad enough, let's talk about how Americans twist and mutilate dogs in the name of so-called love. They breed them into mutant abominations, creating teacup sizes, blue Frenchies, and other useless animals that would never survive in any natural food chain. These creatures aren't dogs anymore. They're Frankenstein-like experiments bred for aesthetics or social status. What's the difference between this and slavery? Americans seem obsessed with the idea of owning something, and that something just has to be a mammal. They drag their poor pets around on leashes like shackled prisoners, calling it love. If we saw humans doing this to one another, we'd call it barbaric and inhumane. But with dogs, it's a billion-dollar industry. Love isn't strapping a collar around an animal's neck and dragging it through crowded streets. Love isn't breeding animals into deformity so they can fit in your purse or have Instagram-worthy fur colors. That's ownership, domination, and, frankly, a perverse desire to control a living being. If Americans truly loved dogs, they wouldn't enslave them in their homes, mutilate their genetics for vanity, or breed them into respiratory nightmares like pugs and French bulldogs. They'd respect dogs for what they are. Animals with specific purposes, not accessories, toys, or emotional crutches. Compare this madness to Asian, Eastern European, and Muslim cultures, where dogs are treated with practicality and boundaries. In these societies, dogs are for work. In Eastern Europe, dogs guard homes, herd sheep, or help on farms. They are rarely, if ever, allowed inside the house. Their purpose is clear, and their role is respected, but not exaggerated. Dogs are for security. In Muslim-majority countries, dogs are often kept for guarding property or herding. They are not allowed to roam freely or sleep in the same spaces as humans due to religious and hygienic considerations. In these cultures, dogs have a defined, functional role, and they are treated as animals, not as surrogate children. They don't infest public spaces, they don't dine at restaurants, and they certainly don't receive human-level attention while actual humans are suffering. Cities infested by canine filth. The American city is a cesspool of dog worship. Dogs are everywhere, on sidewalks, in parks, in stores, even in restaurants. Their owners parade them around like trophies, letting them urinate on every available surface. Let's not even talk about the infamous dog-friendly cafes, where people bring their slobbering beasts into spaces where food is prepared and consumed. You wouldn't tolerate a rat or a pigeon in a restaurant, but because it's a dog, it's suddenly acceptable. Dog urine is soaked into every corner of every American city. It kills grass, stains concrete, and fills the air with its foul stench. And what about their feces? Even if picked up, it leaves behind bacteria and particles that linger in the environment. No other culture tolerates this level of filth in urban spaces. The American delusion. Americans have fallen for one of the greatest con jobs in history. The idea that dogs are anything more than animals. They've been brainwashed into elevating these creatures to human status, pouring billions of dollars into their care while human suffering goes ignored. They've traded hygiene, logic, and common sense for slobber, fur, and feces. Meanwhile, the rest of the world, Asia, Eastern Europe, and Muslim cultures, watches in bemusement as Americans spiral further into this dog-worshipping madness. These cultures understand what dogs are: animals with a purpose, not surrogate children, not human replacements, and certainly not heroes or family members. It's time for America to wake up, clean up its cities, and regain some semblance of sanity when it comes to dogs.
The commercial portrayal of the dog.
Perhaps more than commercials and movies, many cartoons portray dogs in an unrealistic and idealized manner. In the 2001 film Legally Blonde, Reese Witherspoon plays a fashionable sorority girl who, for whatever reason, takes her dog with her everywhere she goes. There are many movies based largely, if not entirely, on dogs or dog-related plots. Even when that is not the case, dogs find their way into the center of at least some episodes.
101 Dalmatians, Air Bud, Beethoven, The Beverly Hillbillies, Dog Whisperer, The Flintstones, Homeward Bound, The Jetsons, Kit Bull, Lady and the Tramp, Lassie the Little Rascals, Married with Children, Milo and Otis, Old Yeller, Our Gang, Rin Tin Tin, Scooby-Doo, The Simpsons, Where the Red Fern Grows, The Wizard of Oz, and many more.
In an informative Reddit post, which I will share shortly, someone mentions a book which highlights just how differently people will view dogs. The author of the post cites a book in which we get a view into dog nuttery as something exclusively reserved for the wealthy at that time. There's an old book by Jessica Mitford which talks about this. This used to be almost exclusively the issue of the very wealthy. Think of rich women being painted with their lapdogs. Now the issue has spread far and wide. In the book, Jessica runs away from her very famous and wealthy British family to elope with a man and go fight alongside the communists during the Spanish Civil War. As they're crossing into Spain, she is horrified by the way some poor folk treat their dogs and vocally complains about it. The little princess grew up on this beautiful ancient estate where the dogs were the equivalent of people. Her new husband, though, tells her to shut up and says that the British obsession with dogs is seen as part of their aristocratic decadence, that the British go around colonizing countries and treating people like dirt, but then go home and worship their dogs, anthropomorphizing them while being monsters to their fellow humans. These poor people, though, keep their dogs for work and other purposes. Just because they're not overly sentimental doesn't make them bad owners.
Then, there is stuff like this. The following is from a Psychology Today article, I believe. Basically, William Shakespeare hated dogs.
The overwhelming impression from the numerous references Shakespeare made to dogs is that, with the exception of hunting hounds, these animals were nothing but nuisances in his world. They were dirty, dangerous, and bothersome. Even when they were being friendly, their fawning could not be trusted.
Historically, dogs were primarily treated as objects and instruments for most of their unnatural existence. As useful as they are said to have been for hunting and farm work, dogs were not widely accepted as pets until the late Middle Ages. Let's switch gears again. Dogs in music. Although I'd wager most musicians are either dog nutters, sympathetic to dogs, or perhaps at best indifferent to them. There are some candid references that can be found from time to time. Here are a few songs that mention dogs in relation to violence. So first, there is Dog Bite by Dead Kennedys, which includes these lines. Dog bite, on my leg, not right, supposed to beg. If you do a web search for who are the dogs in Pink Floyd, you might get something back like this.
Dogs represent businessmen who destroy themselves and others by obsessing over their egos and careers. During Richard Wright's synth solo, the sounds of dogs barking can be heard. This was created by processing the sound using a vocoder.
Then, there is the song Dogs by the band Motorhead, 1987. It includes these lyrics. The politicians lick our bones, the tacticians, hearts of stone. They turn us against our brothers, make us fight and kill each other. Locked in lust, we put our trust in dogs.
I'm like, what up, nigga? Pitbull's supposed to be violent, shaking these fuck niggas.
Yes, you heard right. He said pit bulls are supposed to be violent. And notice also how he makes a reference to shaking, the way pit bulls shake when they are mauling someone. Now, why would there be certain dogs you'd avoid walking by, I wonder? Now surely we're all familiar with this song. It's called Kill the Dog Next Door by a group called The Arrogant Worms. And it's honestly pretty self-explanatory. This is one of the funniest and most relatable songs I've heard. Dog nutters don't understand that people write stuff like this or think of it because of the way dogs tend to drive people around them insane. But obviously, this song is hyperbolic and not meant to be taken as a statement of intent. Still, we've all been there before.
I once was a happy man of sound and stable mind. Then my neighbor bought a dog.
There's a lot more stuff like this I could show you guys, but I'll just point out that one of my favorite Eminem lines ever is the following one. Although, obviously, the track I'm using for reference is not actually Eminem, it's a rock cover of it, or something. And if you've ever heard the song Marshall Mathers, also by Eminem, you'll see that he really, really, really does not like barking dogs.
You ain't nothing but a hound dog, been snooping around my door. You ain't nothing but a hound dog, been snooping around my door. You can wag your tail, but I ain't gonna feed you no more. They told me dogs are pets, and I can see that ain't the case. Yes, they told me they was assets, but I see right through that and utter. It's an industry behind this. You ain't nothing but a hound dog, been snooping round my door. You're just an old hound dog, been snooping round my door. You can wag your tail, but I ain't gonna feed you no more. This mud made me feel so blue, nothing but a lot of stress and strife. Dog culture made me feel so blue. Yeah, they made me waste my time, 'cause I ain't looking for a mutant. All they looking for is food. You ain't